get to everyone's questions at the end of the session. So even if you want to pop them in the chat and we can read through them at the end, we've sort of got 15, 20 minutes. Hopefully we can answer everyone's questions then. All right, so let's get into it. So first I'd like to welcome our first two presenters. We've got Ali Smith, Technical Officer, and Peter Lewis, Assistant Curator of Horticultural Displays, and they're Kings Park, WA. So welcome. Oh, Alison, you might be on mute.
Yep. Just still on mute.
We can't hear you, Alison.
Sorry,
Nah,
don't know what's
that's
going
okay.
on there. Okay,
There you
take
go.
three.
You're good.
Woohoo! Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm Ali Smith, so I'm Project Officer in Horticulture at Kings Park. I've been here for 14 years now. Most of that time I was on the ground in the Botanic Garden working in the Hort Displays team. And so very across how things run within that team. And just in the last 18 months, I've been working as Project Officer still within the Hort team, but also 20% of my role is with the events team. So I am very much involved with this topic, I guess you could say, and a conduit between the Hort team, the operations and the events that happen within Kings Park. So did you want to intro yourself as well now, Pete, and then we'll kick in?
Yeah, morning everybody. My name's Peter Lewis. So I am Assistant Curator of Hort Displays here at Kings Park in the Botanic Garden. I've been here a little bit longer than Ali, so we'll say around 20 years. Yeah, lots of experience in different areas of the gardens mainly, and the display area.
All right, I'm going to see if I can get this presentation to open up for you all now. It worked before, so hopefully it'll work this time. All right, can everybody see that okay? Yep. Okay, great. All right, so I'd like to start out by acknowledging the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional custodians of our lands and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. And as an agency, we seek to preserve and celebrate and learn from their culture and knowledge. So a little bit about us, probably quite a few of you know. So as a site, we're 400 hectares. The Botanic Garden itself sits within that space and it's 17 hectares. And we've seen the Botanic Garden evolve considerably over the last 10 years. We've probably got our highest number of botanical display beds that we'd ever had, and many displays around the parkland areas and visitor precincts within the garden. So it's grown enormously in that time. We have about 14 staff in our Hort team. Nursery staff is about 6. We have about 4 in arbour, about 5 in turf, and probably about another 5 or 6 in our infrastructure team. So it's a select few of us that manage this big area. Last year, we saw a return to kind of pre-COVID numbers, probably about 4.9 million visitors during that time. That was an increase of 15% on the previous year. And we're fortunate to know that we have an average visitor satisfaction of 98%. And one of the things people particularly comment on is the quality of our gardens and our plant displays. So the event space here in Kings Park has grown considerably. We started out really having our Spring Festival every year, which was quite a high intensity event for 1 year. And then over the last probably 10 to 20 years, we've seen many more events coming on board. Obviously had a bit of a lull during COVID, but you can see from the figures here, we were up 134% on visitors through our summer events. So that's a massive increase in visitation within our Botanic Garden and our associated parklands. Some of these events are huge. You know, Anzac Day dawn service, 30,000 people. There's a lot of work that goes in from the team trying to get the space ready, presentable, safe prior to the event. And then we have big long stints of things like our concert series. That's extended quite a lot to almost 6 months now over that summer period, 12 to 15 concerts during that time. And our Moonlight Cinema, again, runs for almost 6 months again over the summer time. We've also seen a number of other events come on board in the last couple of years. We have our Walk for Reconciliation, which sees 8,000 people in one day coming through. And we've got other events coming up later this year, big national cycling championships and things like that, which means we have to run our operations in a different way. So last year was probably the biggest upheaval for us, I would say, as an organisation when it comes to an event. Lightscape, which I think a number of you probably have in your organisations as well now, it really, it just changed the way that we had to operate in the Botanic Garden. We've never had an event of that magnitude within our living collection before. Our events generally tend to be around the outside, near some garden beds, but never through the heart of the Botanic Garden, for want of a better description. And this event, you know, it sees 4 weeks lead up, lots of working in garden beds, infrastructure in garden beds, light installations, cabling, often in conjunction with our peak planting time. So there's a lot to be navigated between both parties, and that's where I've really come in during this time. And I think it's been beneficial to have me as a conduit assisting with that management of this huge new event that we're having. And it's not just that, it's the amount of people that we're seeing then coming through the Botanic Garden. You know, you'd get 6,000 people usually each evening over a space of about 3 to 4 hours. So that obviously needs a lot of consideration from an operational point of view. And it's meant an increase in other work activities outside managing the living collection for our on-ground staff. For example, picking up rubbish, roping off garden beds, and making sure plants are not being trampled and the like. So a lot of consideration has had to go into managing that event. I'll just pass over to you, Pete. Oh no, sorry, one more for me. Yeah. So in as well as all of those external facing or external partnered events, we also have increased our outreach and our horticultural workshops. So over the last couple of years, that's seen a series of sort of 14, 10 over a 3-month period with our staff presenting at weekends, putting together presentations around things like flora for fauna. We've had some amazing propagation workshops, but these all take time to prepare and take us away from our core work on the ground, I suppose, managing the collection. In addition to this, we've started to have a lot more outreach with local government, which is great. So sharing our information and our knowledge, coming together to work on things like urban canopy and the like. Again, really positive, but it also takes us away from our core work on the ground. So that's something that has to be a balance and managed accordingly with the capacity that we have.
Okay, so yeah, as Ali said, with all these events and extra events that we've been having, along that comes positives and negatives for us. So first of all, I'm going to go through the challenges. So challenges, access. So in regard to access, all these events, roads getting shut off, not only is it hard for our public to get through, we have a lot of public complaints. We are known as the People's Park, so people feel they have access to the whole park 100% of the time all year. So it's communicating that out to the public and rerouting areas that, you know, people usually would have their general access through, their bike rides through. Path closures is another big one. As you can see from some of the photos there, we've got really abrupt structures there blocking our paths, and this can be while infrastructure is being put in. Sometimes it's just during the process of the event. So big access issues for not only the public, but for operationally for our staff. So the path that you can see on the second picture there, that's a main path right through the centre of our garden, which has caused big problems for us getting our vehicles through to the top and bottom half of the garden. We are working around it, but it's very challenging, especially at this time of year. It's a busy time of year for us. We're just about to come into plan. We finally got some rain today. So yeah, just one of the challenges that we face. So next thing, roping off collections. Yeah, we want it to be seamless and aesthetically as pleasing as possible for everybody that comes here. Having to rope off our collections for different events and at all times of the year, just with sight lines, having ropes up, yeah, it's not a good look. And it's not pleasing just aesthetically to be able to walk through and just have those open, clean spaces. Another thing is the timing of events conflicting with our work. So we've just finished our big concert series over the summer. We had probably about a week off, and then we're just ramping up straight into Lightscape, which will be running, I think, till end of August plus pack up, so September, say. That's our planting time over here. So last year we actually held off planting, which then pushed on issues into the way we manage the plants, watering, different things. We've re-looked at it this year, so that in a way is a positive because we've changed our thinking. It's made us re-look at the way we do things, and I think in a way it's probably turned into a positive. But yeah, again, it's just conflicting at time, at a busy time to have such a large scale event in the park. Other challenges, biosecurity considerations. We're a PSHB exclusion zone. We also have dieback. We're coming into winter. We've got a lot of water around. Managing that, yeah, is a big challenge for us. Also the compaction and degradation of the lawn. We've just had a huge summer series of concerts. The lawn hasn't had time to breathe, and then we're putting in another major event. You know, we're replacing vast amount of lawns. Our turf team's a team of 4. It's a huge impact on their operation. Just in general, staff time away from our ground etc. collections. You know, not only with events coming into the park, but going out and doing our workshops. We love doing our workshops. We love getting out there and educating the public and other colleagues, but all of that takes preparation. And we also want to make sure that we're doing the right thing in our own backyard and upkeeping our own backyard. It puts a huge pressure on our staff who always want to, you know, have the best of getting that message out there, but also having the highest profile garden beds that we can possibly deliver. Tree management, it's another big thing. Obviously, with all these events, there's extra work on our arbor team, just extra risk assessments, movement, changing of tracks depending on numbers of people under the areas to make sure it's safe for everyone, safety checks. Yeah, more challenges. There is positives in this. I feel like I'm saying a lot of challenges, but there is positives to it. Infrastructure damage. So we've had extra pathways put in this year, especially for Lightscape. I think it's nearly daily we're having reticulation issues down in those areas, which obviously takes staff away to go and fix them straight away so that they continue with their works. It also comes at a cost, and it's a big risk to our collection. So, you know, as everyone knows, like one plant in the ground, maybe a contract site, it's one plant, but to us, that plant, it's more than that, you know. We're out there collecting the seed, it comes back in. It's a huge process to get that plant into the ground and then grow it for 3 years. It's not just a plant. Public complaints, especially our staff on the ground, they're at the forefront of people coming up. You know, what's this doing here? Why is that path blocked? The road shut. Why is it shut for 8 weeks? So they're at the forefront of those complaints. So it's challenging for them, and a lot of staff, you know, it's not their comfort zone to talk. So we have channels, but it's still, yeah, it's not nice having that confrontation with the public, probably nearly on a daily basis for some of the staff, depending on the areas that they're in. And the other thing is short notice, having to be reactive a lot of the time with a lot of these contractors and events. You can see one in the top corner. That structure is actually over a garden bed. So that's the wishing well. So we found out that was happening like a day before, and it just got put over the top of one of our garden beds for a TV cross. So yeah, just, yeah, challenges daily. So I'll move on to the next one. This is food for thought. So we want to retain our integrity as an agency. So it's just some thought-provoking points that we've put here. So it's, you know, is there a maximum capacity we should have for events, especially in our Botanic Garden? The increased length of infrastructure and events on the site, are we, people come here for, you know, psychological benefits, for well-being. We've got a lot of apartments around us. We're in the middle of the city, as you all know. So we've got apartment blocks surrounding us. You know, people come in here for the walks, for their green space, for their well-being, yet they're faced with all this infrastructure and construction. Do we need to set event spaces outside our Botanic Gardens? So our Botanic Garden, 17 hectares, we're a park of 400 hectares. Do we need to question that here? Do we need to think about putting set sites outside of the garden? Maybe we should only use the Botanic Garden for smaller capacity events, keep it under 7,000 people, keep it bespoke, keep it intimate. Do we lose the essence of who we are as a Botanic Garden and an environmental agency by 80% of the year having events in our space when we're sending a message of conservation? And does this, as I said before, does this lessen our role in providing green spaces for health and well-being? And also, do we need to lessen the impact on the collections, and not only for the collection, but also for the staff that we have here? So just thoughts, and I think they probably go across all the, you know, gardens that are having more events. So next bit, we are going on solutions and benefits. So there is a lot of positives that have come out of these events for us. So we've created opportunities for collaboration and communication. So we have the new role, as Ali said before. It's been a great conduit having Ali in her position, and that role was put on. So we have a two-way channel between our Hort and events, and definitely it has made operational efficiency higher. Just always being on board, that line of communication's always open. Utilising contractors. So some of the major works we do, for example, after concerts and things, we have to clean our major big ponds in the centre of the gardens. Due to timing now and a few other operational issues, we now utilise contractors to do that job for us. Our Hort trained staff aren't doing sort of labour intensive jobs that we're utilising contracts. So it's a lesser drain on our staff time and less time away from our collection, essentially. We've got a hygiene management plan now for our contractors, which we never had before, which is great. So it's best practice standards for all working on BCARM lands, and that's a safeguard for our collection. So that's a huge positive moving forward. assessing collection management and adapting practices. So better collection outcomes and better for optimum staff. So we've changed a few of the ways that we've managed our collection. And I think so far it's actually been a positive step for the staff, taking more ownership, and also just for efficiency in general. Funding for upgrades is always positive. So that means we've got improved facilities, better access for the public and all ability access, which we haven't had right through all of our garden. Also for us as staff, so being able to get our vehicles right through, it's been a huge positive. Infrastructure that complements our living collections and supports the visitation and our operations. So that's been a big benefit for us as the garden. Okay, so yeah, positive outcomes. So visitor engagement. So, you know, it gives us the opportunity to reach out and connect with people with our lands and work that we do. So a different demographic of people that we wouldn't usually have in the park. So this can happen through, you know, interpretation during events, and it doesn't matter of the event size. So I think I was saying to a couple of guys the other day at a concert, you know, there was people that would never stop taking photos of eucalypts and our labels that probably never would have even been in the Botanic Garden. And I could hear, you know, saying, you know, we'll have to come back. So we're outreaching to these people that we never would have, might not even known the garden was there before. So permanent infrastructure. So that serves our events, visitor engagement, helps with staff time, but not impacting the living collection. So as you can see on the right there, the limestone pad upgrade. So that's there permanently now. And so we basically don't have to do anything to that site for events now. That's permanently there, which has been a huge positive. The other good thing about our events is the horticultural staff. So we were able to put in a bird waterer into our RTN site, and that came off doing workshops and our outreach programs, which is a great outcome for our staff. So they're out there educating and engaging with the public and, you know, all different people. And then we were able to get something that was important to our staff back onto the ground. So that, yeah, that was a huge positive outcome for us. Yeah, I think that's it for me. So I'll pass you back, Ali.
Hi. So I'll just finish up with this last slide. I've sort of been mulling it over a lot and thinking, you know, it's inevitable that these large scale events are likely here to stay. And I think as a group, it's really important that we continue to advocate for our living collections, our areas of native vegetation and the green spaces on our lands. That's broadly speaking across many of our organisational operations and the work that we do here across many teams. So I think continuous discussion, don't be afraid to say no if something's not right in a certain area. I think we're pretty good at that to a degree. And then being prepared to evolve and adapt. Yeah, I think the same way we've always done things isn't necessarily the best way. Let's keep talking to one another. You know, if we have challenges with our time and what we can do and how we can manage our collection due to increased visitation or events which are also positive, let's look at how we do things to make them work better for us for better outcomes. Communication is a massive one. So, you know, under the guidance of our various policies and documents that we have as organisations that give us our strategic direction, you know, we should still keep working together within teams. So, for example, us within the horticultural displays team, then across the organisation, you know, connecting with the comms team, the events team, the infrastructure team, and then again with external parties to work out the best outcomes all round and what we can achieve together. And then I think, you know, sometimes it can be frustrating, the events in our spaces, and we want the best for our collections and the work that we're doing, absolutely. But I think to try and keep an open mind and supporting that opportunity to connect with more people, an event could be that, like Pete just said, that first time someone comes to the Botanic Garden, they start to connect with that place, they start to see our flora, they fall in love with it, and it just gives us the chance to get our key messages out there to more people. So I think it's an evolving thing that we're dealing with and working with more events. I think there's positives, there's challenges, but I think coming together, evolving and adapting and communicating really is the way forward. And that's it for us.
Thanks, Ali and Peter. Yeah, fantastic. So I'll head straight in because we're running a little bit over time to John Sandham, Collection Development Officer at the Botanic Gardens of South Australia. I'll leave you to introduce yourself, John.
Mani na putni. Yata yata ana, nagalo tampinthi, nagalo Ghana, yang tangia imparenti. And I'm sure our Indigenous people would say I haven't pronounced that correctly, but I am recognising the Ghana people looking after our lands and recognising their past, present and future part in our wonderful world that we live here in South Australia. And there's also the Permanac people in the Adelaide Hills who cross over, because our three gardens, we have one here, the Mother Garden or the original garden in Adelaide. We have Mount Lofty Botanic Gardens, which was developed to grow more cool, loving nature, but that's in the Adelaide Hills. And also a garden that was bequeathed to the state at Watunga, and that has South African links, and very sort of, when we talk about collection management, very difficult, because a lot of the stuff that we have in the collections there is slightly weedy. So I'm not going to diversify and talk about that today, but I just would like to say I think Alison and Peter have done a wonderful presentation, and I haven't got slides. And I think everything that you've brought up in that presentation is exactly a reflection of what happens here within the Botanic Gardens and State Herbarium for South Australia. I think you've articulated the problems with the changing scenes of Botanic Gardens and what events mean to us. I've been in the gardens for 35 years, and I initially came to look after the Bicentennial Conservatory, which was a tropical biome, so to speak, to show people in South Australia what tropical rainforests were like. Over the period of that 35 years, we've kept the building, but it's now not a tropical rainforest, it's just a wet sclerophyll rainforest. And now it's become an actual arcade where we display art. We have light shows in there, we have National Geographic exhibitions where people come and look at the Photography of the Year award. So in other words, the whole concept of the building has changed, the whole outcomes have changed. And you talk about being flexible. I think we really do need to be flexible, because if we say, oh, that's not going to happen, we will be in the past. And I think we've got to look to the future. However, one of my frustrations is there's a bit of seepage or a bit of drag. When I first came to the gardens, the South Australian event world had the Adelaide Festival, but that was every other year. And part of that, when I arrived, was WOMAD, and that was in Botanic Park. So therefore, we had the pressure on the park, then a year with no pressure. Then somebody made the decision that the Adelaide Festival should not be every other year, but yearly. So in actual fact, the pressure on the park became yearly. And then it was at a time of year where there was not a public holiday, but then they moved it to a time of the year when there was a public holiday. So instead of just having the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we had the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So in other words, there was a creep the pressure on the park has increased. And unless one articulates the importance of the collections, unless the one has got an understanding, there is a tendency for people in higher echelons to say, oh, that worked, let's move on, let's have another one. And we're in a very interesting cusp of our event mode here. We are just going to have a fire garden and a night show with lights, as Alison and Pete have just shown you that they have in there. But we have a fire garden as well, which is virtually everything that's alight is fire, and that will be in the middle of the winter. And people come at night, obviously, to see that. When we come in the morning, there's a bit of mess around, and again, I don't want to go over what Alison and Peter have said. That puts pressure on the staff. But we have actually, on the cusp of, in September, we will be opening a 15-site exhibition of Chihuly glass, the famous Chihuly glass. And we have huge displays, beds that are sort of 16, 17 meters in diameter, which we'll have to fill up with plants to protect the actual erection that, you know, could be quite a large format. And I think probably if you look at Chihuly glass exhibitions in other botanic gardens, you'll see that it's a great exhibition, but you have to sort of keep people away from the art. So there'll be illumination of them, so there'll be electrical conduct. So in other words, the Botanic Gardens here are on the cusp of something quite unique for us, because it's going to start in September and go all the way through to the following April. So that's a tremendous pressure, as has been already said, on the gardens. But secondly, we're going to have nighttime events as well. And there, as I say, there will be a learning curve for all our staff. And I think the previous presentation dealt with this, but I think as far as I'm concerned, and as far as the staff here, we're just starting to see some fatigue and sort of lackluster within certain people, because every time one event finishes, there's another event on. And I take support from Kings Park there. I think we need to probably be doing more for our staff to make sure that that their well-being is thought of, because it is a sort of a new world that they're entering. And the other thing it did, as it was alluded to as well, is that we move away from the curation, the sourcing of plants for collections, the maintenance, the reviews of what we have in our various plant collections. And yes, I agree, it's the future. I agree that we have to be flexible, but I also believe that we have to do it in a positive and structured way as the outcomes from Kings Park. And I'm sure Auckland and Sydney will replicate. The only thing I would like to strongly say is that BCARM was set up for Botanic Gardens collections and record management, and it's very good to see these occasions bringing loads of people in. And I hope the people that are listening and seeing what is presented today will realise that that knowledge that all these gardens hold is everybody within McGann's knowledge. And I think it should encourage people to become far more part of BCARM as part of McGann's, and hopefully we'll be able to give them the comfort and support that they need to look after their collections in their gardens with this new event coming on. So I realise we're running a bit over time, Cherie, so I think that's all I would like to say. But to all out there, BCARM is your friend. You really need to come to these forums and learn more about what you can do for your collection. So thank you very much for listening to me, and back to you, Cherie.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I suppose I joined BCARM was to learn more about collections management and the role our gardens here in Geelong can play too. And it's been a great way to obviously learn, but also network. And, I've really enjoyed, all the forums in the past, as well as now all the speakers. There's such a wealth of knowledge out there. And I think, especially with this events one, we've sort of talked about it and advocating for our gardens. There's been a lot of sort of chat about it. So it's a really important, I suppose, subject out there. So please, don't feel like the forum's the end of the discussion, I suppose. Definitely reach out. And there's lots of people out there that can share their experiences and help as well. We might just quickly have a bit of a break, grab a coffee, and we'll just meet back at 10:40, and then we'll get straight back into it. We'll have Damien and Barbara speaking with us, and then we can finish off with some questions. So just stretch your legs, grab a drink, and jump back in at 10:40. No, it's already 10:40, sorry. So we might do 10:45. I'll give you 5 minutes. All right. Thank you, everyone.
should have turned the recording off during the break. Now I'm going to have to edit it out.
I'm sorry, Rebecca. I should have.
That's all right. No,
Forgot about that.
I should have thought. It doesn't matter.
They
Anyway.
could just fast forward
Yeah.
for 5 minutes.
They probably need to make a cup of tea anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
If they're
yeah,
watching
good
it
time break.
on rewind. All right.
All right, we'll get back into it. So next up, we've got Damien Wrigley, Manager Living Collections and Conservation at the Botanic Gardens in Sydney. So welcome, Damien.
Thanks, Sheree. I'll just share my screen and make sure it works. How's that? Are you seeing that?
Not yep.
Does that come through? Sorry.
Yes, yep, all good. Thanks, Damien.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's good.
So I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I'm meeting on today, which is the Darug people, but also pay my respects to the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and the Darug as well, because our 3 gardens spread across those 3 locations. So today I want to run through, I guess, our perspective for Botanic Gardens of Sydney with our 3 gardens in the domain, and just give you a bit of an idea of our perspectives on managing events and the challenges and benefits for those. So just for those that are new to the Botanic Gardens world, don't have much of a background on Sydney or haven't had the chance to visit our gardens, we do have the 3 gardens across the harbour, the Royal Botanic Gardens Sydney, the Blue Mountains Botanic Gardens, Mount Tomah, and the Australian Botanic Garden, Mount Annan. They're all very different. They have unique approaches to what they're doing, whether that be solely natives out at Mount Annan or a mix of the 2 between the other 2 gardens. And of course, we've also got the other facilities, the Australian Plant Bank and the New South Wales National Herbarium, and helping us manage all of the work that goes across all of these, including the events that happen across these sites. We've got over 300 staff, and our volunteers contribute over 40,000 hours, 43,000 hours towards different elements of horticulture, science, education, and of course visitor experience as well. So we're very lucky to have that kind of resource behind us. I guess for us, the focus around the events that we have in our gardens is now really being driven through the lens of the Living Collection Strategy, which was released last year. So this gives us a really good opportunity to make sure that we're focusing as an organisation on the same strategic outcomes that we want to achieve across the organisation. So making sure that we've all got the same ideas of what we're trying to achieve, and keeping that in our minds when we deliver the events that we try to deliver for the visitors that come across our sites. So those that haven't seen it, we've got the outcomes that we're trying to work towards and strategic goals of our Living Collection Strategy. And this includes collections resilience, which really looks at how we're working with other parts of the organisation that are delivering different assets or events or anything like that for our programs, whether it's education as well. And that just really helps to bring it back down to what it is that we're trying to achieve. And I probably should have mentioned, it's all linked back to our legislative responsibilities through the Royal Botanic Gardens and Domain Trust Act. So it makes sure that we're actually helping ourselves to deliver on what it is we're meant to deliver to government, and ensuring that the living collections is central to that. So for us, we have a really, I guess, a big mixed bag of events across our sites, from incredibly huge, massive events at the Domain to very, very small private events in one of our venues at one of our other sites. And, you know, I guess there's some real risks that come with that, like has already been mentioned this morning, around the numbers that are coming in and using the collections, or using the gardens and impacting the collections. But what we're finding the best approach for us is to make sure that horticulture has some say in what happens in events. So trying to give some advice to help those that are putting materials or equipment in places, that they're not doing the wrong thing to harm collections, like the roots of trees and the garden beds that we've put in place. So here are just some statistics from our last annual report. So it just gives you an idea of the kinds of differences across our sites. The domain, like I said, holds some pretty major events, but we also have a large number of events at our other sites. So Australian Botanic Gardens, Mount Annan, over 460 events in 1 year is an incredible amount to deal with. Blue Mountains Botanic Gardens a little bit further away. It's a little bit smaller. The facilities out there aren't of the same size as the other gardens, so their events tend to focus on meetings and weddings and things like that. When it comes to Sydney, a lot of the larger ones are in the domain, but we do still have a lot of events in Sydney Gardens, like in the Calyx, where we had over 58,000 people come and visit last year. And of course, that's coming up really close to our collections and being able to engage in a really intimate way. So for us, I guess in talking to a lot of the teams across our organisation in preparing the presentation today, it's the frequency and size of events that really can have a big impact. And that's been mentioned this morning already. Having to deal with events that come in quick succession after each other can put a lot of pressure on the teams, particularly if we need some time to remediate large patches of grass or other areas. So it's just making sure that we're working really closely with our event teams to give ourselves the space and time to respond to events and ensure that we're preparing for the next ones in the most appropriate way. So that's things like bed and tree protection zones, working with our whole teams to ensure that there's those adequate demarcation between areas that can be used and can't be used to try and minimise those pressures. When it comes to the teams that support us in delivering our events, we'll have dedicated contractors, like was mentioned previously this morning, and rangers that will come to those events dedicated solely to help manage those. And that can include some of those overnight asset protection rangers. So that's making sure we've got some security on overnight when there's some major events happening in places like Sydney, for instance. There's a lot of things that happen around the harbour at night time. So ensuring that we've got that kind of presence in the garden just in case. We also have traffic management, which we use to try and reduce the impact when people are moving through places like the domain or the Mount Annan, where cars can actually be a major part of the landscape. And I guess the one that came out, which I think is a really interesting one for us to consider, is the way that consumers behave, so the way that our visitors behave when they come in and experience our events. So it can be different based on whether or not it's a free event or whether it's a paid event. And we do find that sometimes people who come to a free event may not hold the same level of respect for the place that they're in or the experience that they're having. They may not actually think about the next visitor that has to come along after them, and they may not leave it in as good a condition as they probably should, which we all expect. So it's just being able to work with those kinds of expectations from visitors and trying to change that behaviour as much as we can. And of course, you can't discount the difference with cultural expectations. People from all over the world are visiting botanic gardens. It's one of the things that people like to do when they travel. So just understanding that we're going to have a difference of culture, whether they be people from other parts of Australia or other parts of the world. We just have to work with that and help to communicate what it is we're trying to achieve. So for us, when it comes to managing sustainability and pressures, there's a lot of things that we try and do. So we always have agreements with the organisations that deliver events with us, and that makes sure that we have an agreed approach to how things will be done. So that can include specifying the kind of sustainable packaging that we would like them to use when they're serving food and beverage in the gardens. But then there's limitations in the industry on what we can do around sustainability for energy and waste and carbon footprint. So there's still a bit of work for the industry to do to catch up. And I'm talking about the events industry here. It's not so easy to put those kind of targets and restrictions on our partners that help us deliver events, but it is something we want to work towards. What we do try and do is put bonds in place. So if we're having events, we try and make sure that there's something there that if the worst case scenario, part of our living collections or assets get damaged, then we can actually have that bond that we can use to put towards remediation. And of course, that's just our floor for an event. If it's a very large event, we will look at increasing that amount to make sure that we're actually doing the right thing by the collections. Like I said earlier, horticulture is always consulted, and as you can see here, the tree in the shot, this is actually one of the installations from Lightscape last year at Sydney, and the horticulture team helped to put that in place. It was them that installed the lights through the tree. So it's some of the ways that we try and mitigate that impact. Like I said, communicating the living collections, the importance through our strategy is one of the things that we've done to try and raise awareness. We use our education programs as much as possible to help people understand what we're doing. And we also use the data that we've got behind our collections to create the labels. We use the records that we hold on all of our specimens in the gardens to try and inform the interpretation and the placemaking, inform the education programs that help people understand just how critical our living collections are when they come and experience events with us. Of course, we use our media strategies. We have media releases that go out and try and tell people about the work that we're doing. So as we try and develop new event spaces like our new garden gallery, we try and tie that back to the importance of the work that we're trying to do for plant conservation so that people understand that, yes, it is a place we can come and visit and experience and have some fun in the garden. There is actually some serious work that goes on behind the scenes as well. And of course, like everybody else, we use social media to try and raise awareness about what we're doing so that when people do get to the gardens, they've actually got that background information about the kind of work that we do. Public funding and revenue is always a big challenge for a lot of gardens, whether you're a really small one or a really large one. Of course, for us being one of Australia's largest botanic gardens organisations, we do get some great support from government to fund what we're doing. It gives us the chance to really set in place some of those long-term projects and programs that we want to achieve. And that helps with establishing these events and being able to roll with the, I guess what John was saying around, that sort of slippage that we're having with events where we're holding more and more of them and people are seeing them as a great place to go. But of course, there's those revenue issues that we all have. Government funding can't cover everything that we do. It's the same across any sector in Australia. So we do have to raise our own revenue to help us deliver what we do. And of course, events is just one of those things that we can deliver that also helps us raise some funds as well. And some of those things that we add on to those experiences are things like our tap and donate functionality that we've got now. So people can come around and visit the gardens, they can attend events, and they've got a very easy way to contribute even more to what we're doing. And we're finding some really positive results from that as well. So for us, like I've just said, increased revenue for gardens operations is one of the benefits we're getting. It does encourage others to align with us, a bit of brand alignment. When people see that events are going really well and they see people enjoying the gardens, it does attract more attention and more support. Again, global audience, there's people traveling the world to come and see us. So when these events are on, things like Sydney World Pride, there was people from all around the world came and joined in that massive party. And that's a great thing for us to show that we're supporting these kinds of events. We support people to be who they are. And, things like our Love Your Nature event in the Calyx was one of those examples of tying it all back together again. Increasing that awareness is absolutely critical. Hopefully we're contributing to decreasing plant blindness through these engagements and these events, but of course it's the whole suite of work that we're doing across all of our education, our media and our comms and our events that help us do that. So I guess some thoughts from me, even for large organisations like Botanic Gardens of Sydney, it can still be really difficult to run events across sites. They're going to be different based on the facilities you have and the resources that you hold. So you've just got to work with what you have. But I guess, when you understand what it is you're trying to achieve, it can actually become a lot easier to implement an effective event as long as you've got an understanding shared across the team of what that is. I think resourcing is a massive one. If you're an organisation like Botanic Gardens of Sydney, everyone knows that we have a large resource base to work with. But what does come with this, and obviously, yes, I'm getting my violin out here, the expectations that come with a larger garden with more resources means that they are larger expectations. Visitors expect more from a bigger organisation. So you constantly get that pressure to do more, do better, be better. So I think it's just understanding that those kind of pressures can change as your events start to scale up as well. Be clear and back your work. So things like our living collection strategy is really critical for us, and it helps us to explain to people why it is we exist. We're not just here for a good party, we're here for a range of things. And I guess above all else, you've really got to look at the entire team that makes an event happen. It's not just the events team, it's not just the assets team, it's not just horticulture. It's not just comms, it's everyone working together and trying to achieve the same outcome. And for me, I think always learn from past experiences. Every event's going to teach you something, whether it's good or bad, but take the time to celebrate it when it's good. Take the time to celebrate when your living collections look amazing, and when they come out the other side still looking amazing. I think it's really, really worth celebrating just what you're achieving with these kinds of added pressures in the day. Thank you.
Thanks, Damien. That's I'll get straight on to Barbara, and then we might have some time then for some questions afterwards from our presenters. So Barbara Wheeler is the curator at Auckland Botanic Gardens. So welcome, Barbara.
Yeah, thanks, Cherie. I'm beaming to some of you from the future. I'll just kick into the presentation, just tap a tick. Are you all seeing that?
Yep, it's not in
Oh,
display
still
mode
in,
though.
it's still in display mode. Right. Super. We're there now, I think.
Yep, that's great.
Awesome. So kia ora koutou, coming to you from Auckland Botanic Gardens in New Zealand. If I can get my mouse to work, I'll be happy. So the presentation today from me is going to discuss event strategies through the lens of events at Auckland and Dunedin Botanic Gardens, because I have worked at Dunedin Botanic Garden for 20 years. I've been here at Auckland Botanic Garden for just about 3 years. So it's interesting to look through the lens of how both gardens operate in Aotearoa, New Zealand. This cover slide is not from New Zealand, it's from Longwood Gardens in the US, but it displays this. Everyone has talked about how our botanic gardens are being pushed into spaces for events that risk diminishing our mission, and Damien and John and Peter and Ali have all mentioned that, and generating higher revenue is often at the source of where we're being pushed. It can add to visitors' perception of botanic gardens as another park or another green space, so it reduces our total impact in getting across those really important messages Damien has just mentioned around the science of botanic gardens, conservation, education, research, that ultimately do define who we are. So not losing sight of our mission and objectives is really critical. I wanted to touch on just a few key differences between Auckland and Dunedin Botanic Gardens and how they manage events. Auckland has revenue generation targets, and Dunedin Botanic Garden does not yet. Auckland have a visitor services manager who approves and oversees and manages events, and in Dunedin, events are managed and supported through a couple of senior leaders' roles primarily, and filtered into a lot of people's roles. Auckland can apply entry fees for events. Dunedin have a no entry fee requirement. And I should say, if there's anything wrong about Dunedin Botanic Garden, I do apologise. It's been 3 years since I've been there, so the world may have moved on, but I'm pretty sure most of it's accurate. I know Dylan's on the line, so he'll be able to tell us at the end how well I've done. But starting at Auckland Botanic Gardens, events, as I said, are managed through the visitor services team. The revenue generation target currently is around $145,000 for this current financial year of revenue that must be generated through Auckland Council budgets. And it's really to ensure that the community, the wider community of Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, are able to enjoy our green spaces. So the Botanic Garden is included in the green spaces and the parks and reserves. Very early on in the 2000s, Auckland Botanic Garden had a survey done, and it was evident through that survey that events give people a reason to visit, right? So they're a way to grow awareness of the Botanic Garden. Outside of those people that are already converted fanatics, and we know who they are, they already are great supporters. They're already converted, but otherwise Botanic Gardens are infinitely delayable. I love that coin of phrase. Mitch Newton, our visitor services manager, says that quite often. The Auckland Botanic Garden mission is to connect people to plants and make ideas grow. So events can actually help us to achieve this mission. This aerial shows one part of the gardens. There's another big part that's not shown where there are some larger event spaces, but you can see in this aerial there's some significant green space. Well, it's brown because it's summer, but in the other side of what's not shown, there are some larger event spaces. So it allows some capacity for larger events. Auckland Botanic Gardens, for those who don't know, is only a young garden. It's only 44 years old. And needing to generate revenue and having a showcase event of sculpture in the gardens since 2007 means the infrastructure is either already present or it has a justifiable case for being added. And Auckland Botanic Garden approach events in three main ways. They either create their own events through workshops, sculpture in the garden. They partner with other organisations to create events like the dinosaurs in the park a number of years ago that bring differing audiences, and those partners can bring good infrastructure with them. And also host events here. So the Botanic Garden becomes a venue for weddings, food trucks, events that self-manage. They hold events here according to our rules, and they give the Botanic Garden some dosh for the privilege of doing so. Looking to Dunedin Botanic Garden, it's very similar there. Their events are either run by the Botanic Garden through events like Rhododendron Day. The City Council will run events, for example, Sunday Sounds at the Bandstand. External parties will have events, weddings, bandstand garden performances, or partnerships, for example, Science Festival or Wild Dunedin. But there's no events team on staff, so approval sits with the senior management. And you can see by this aerial, not all of the aerial, some of the bigger green spaces around the edges are not the Botanic Garden. So there is very little large-scale green space. So larger events find it very difficult to be held at Dunedin Botanic Gardens. There's no infrastructure outside of around the bandstand for lighting and power supply, and so it dictates where events can be held. The other complication at Dunedin, of course, is working around the historic 161-year-old landscape. It's a major consideration to maintain integrity of the Botanic Garden and the plant collections. And I'll just reinforce at this point that Dunedin don't have to generate revenue, so it offers a great deal of protection and allows senior leadership to focus on maintaining botanical integrity. There is undoubtedly council and community pressure to extend the range of events in the Dunedin Botanic Garden. In the future, I'd anticipate that will result in more pressure and a wider scope of events and potentially revenue generation, but at the minute it offers some protection. So creating our own events are really, it's a really clever way to get people in, and it can align to our collections. So here's the first flowering of the corpse flower at Dunedin Botanic Garden. It's excuse me, Dunedin for saying this, it's a relatively easy event. It links to mission. It allows us a platform to showcase plants and conservation. Takes generally minimal effort, and it focuses on informing and educating our visitors. And staff are generally highly engaged by this type of event because it's showcasing their work, their mana. At the other end of the scale is Sculpture in the Gardens, the signature event at Auckland Botanic Garden, and in partnership with the Friends of the Auckland Botanic Garden. This one is put on every couple of years. And this requires major installation, visitor logistics, managing artists' visions while maintaining control of what art goes where and how it is installed. So, and everyone's mentioned it, communications are vital between visitor services and the field team. A capacity of staff to manage impacts on the collections is a really important conversation to have. Horticulture staff are dragged, and I say dragged and sometimes willingly, sometimes not, into these types of events. So they need to be carefully managed, as it does pull staff from their core business, which everyone has mentioned. So communicating the value of these events to our staff is really important. The Sculpture in the Gardens attracts over 300,000 to 400,000 visitors, many of whom perhaps would not visit the Botanic Garden at any other time of the year. So it allows an opportunity to connect those visitors with plants and seed ideas in them around gardening, our plants, conservation and nature. Also looking for opportunities to connect events to the science of horticulture, and Damien has mentioned this, and utilising our partners to help deliver to both support their work while reducing the workload on our staff is really clever. This lab in the box, the mobile science laboratory, we had that at Dunedin a couple of years, and the Botanic Garden put the event on and did the promotion, marketing, put a few staff in. But we were supported hugely by our partners who actually helped deliver some of the lessons. And we lent on a lot of our University of Otago partners, masters and PhD students who'd undertaken research at the Botanic Garden, who are enormously happy to have a platform in which to talk about their work and really engage with our visitors at the Botanic Garden. So bringing that science of horticulture to the fore allows staff to engage with visitors in areas that they are the most passionate about. And at Auckland Botanic Garden, when the cherry blossom is in flower, my gosh, the crowds do flock in, and I'm sure that's the same at all the gardens represented online today. But looking for events that highlight the beauty of plants is also a clever way to pull visitors in and educate and inform on things that align to what we do. And spring's a great time, even in the subtropics of Auckland, to have events after the dreary Auckland winter, as people want to roam outside. So utilising those natural bloom events and wrapping with activity is a clever way of considering an events calendar that's pretty low key. And showcasing plants and collections engages staff and adds to that sense of pride they feel as stewards of our spaces. Here are the dinosaurs, and these were at Auckland Botanic Gardens a number of years ago. But it's similar to the corpse flower, really. You've got the dinosaurs that pull people in, but then you're subliminally doing some work behind the scenes for your visitors. So the focus may be on the dinosaurs, but there's an opportunity to educate on the habitats that they roamed in. And here the dinosaur is in the middle of Gondwana Arboretum. Really good opportunity to showcase Gondwana Arboretum and the plant collection within that. Hosting events is this one here is Eye on Nature. And this one for Auckland Botanic Gardens is aligning to educational outcomes, our educational outcomes. It's a huge partnership between the Beautification Trust and Auckland Botanic Garden, and over 1,500 young children attend this environmental education event over 4 days based in the Botanic Garden. And the garden staff are involved and able to sow the seeds for potential future gardeners and Botanic Garden staff. Again, it links to the mission of connecting people to plants, really important. The other positive is Eye on Nature involves over 10 partners, probably over 15 partners, and the event creates networking opportunities, so it increases the Botanic Gardens network, enabling future potential partnerships. Big things come from small conversations at those sorts of events. The Botanic Gardens are also hosts for events, so they're often seen as a great location for events to be hosted in. So for New Zealand BGs, they're funded through local rates. It's important for us to enable our local community to have events for community benefit and community outcomes. And it comes with challenges and pressures, and those have already been talked about, but particularly in managing external parties and their expectations on the type of event they want to have in the Botanic Garden. Events hosted at a Botanic Garden, though, can pull in quite the different crowd. Here's one at the Dunedin Botanic Garden. It's a Fringe Festival event, which is an 11-day arts festival of experimental visual and performance art. And again, it creates unique challenges to ensure events accepted are appropriate for a family and garden venue. I love this lady's face. She's quite confused by seeing the giant snail. At Auckland Botanic Garden, the food truck collective approached wanting the Botanic Garden to host having food trucks on site. This was probably 1 or 2 years ago. And Botanic Garden staff are only involved in permitting, so controls are in place through criteria, and seeking field team input is really critical to ensure any concerns are managed and not have staff surprised on the day by something that the food truck collective have done. Protecting our spaces. So here's a great shot at Dunedin. It's the 150th summer celebration, and it's the Chills playing, a very well-known Dunedin band, well-known New Zealand band, and several thousand attended. And in the middle of the image, just above, there's a tree above the guy in the centre with the white hair. That's the site of the 2,000 square metre rock garden. And it was a prime location for people to lounge on the rocks during this concert, and obviously the likelihood of damage to plants was high. So protecting the garden was a key for the security of plants. At Dunedin, the Management Plan and Reserves Act policies are enormously useful in providing structure and protection to what is allowed or prohibited, similar to what Damien was saying about the collection policies. These policies are backed up by strong criteria that have been developed over the past 20 years to ensure plant collections and landscapes are protected. There are designated areas of the garden where events are allowed, vehicle routes in, car parking, loads and loads of things, crowd control, security, rubbish collection, event management. They're all part of that conversation very early on. That's a straightforward process for Botanic Garden run events. For council run events, it's been mentioned it can lead to tricky conversations, as council staff often need to be enlightened about the difference between a botanic garden and a park, which really matters for protecting our collections. For external events, the robust process weeds out the fly-by-nighters. The criteria and policies weed out the events that provide too many conflicts with the plant collections. The events that are inappropriate for a family audience or that don't have local community outcomes. Most notably, events must be free for entry. At Auckland Botanic Garden, the management plan and engagement plan and plant collection guidelines give protection, and having a Botanic Garden visitor services team means we can maintain really good control on events. Event criteria and the assessment process set event spaces for specific types of activity, and they ensure protection of the garden and plant collections. Protecting our spaces is just as much about how we communicate beforehand the value of our collections, gardens and landscapes, as it is about the practical ways we protect them on the event day. And Damien mentioned this about articulating the value of our collections. I just wanted to quickly show you, this one is a really good example of a lesson I learned at Dunedin. This is a global event called Park Run, a global running event for those, some of you may run these around the world. And I still remember when organisers met with us, asked us to host this event. My immediate response behind the scenes was to say no, because it's a huge conflict of bringing active recreation into a passive recreation zone. But I'll never forget a senior manager reminding us that if we said no, we ran the risk of the organisers running the event irrespective as an informal run, and that by considering it, we would have more control on the event and how it ran. It's a lesson to me in putting aside biases and giving every idea due consideration and discussion with the applicant, and where we could and alignment was there, work to enable the event to happen. Parkrun's been operating at Dunedin for over 10 years now, and there's a lot of conditions laid down. One of those was around route. They wanted a flat route. There were too many conflicts with giving a completely flat route, so we allowed for a flat route for one lap and then they go up the hill. Hence, it's one of the very few park runs in the world that has a steep hill en route. But otherwise, there are some strong conditions in place to protect pedestrian safety, with pedestrians taking precedence, stewards at pinch points, event managers checking the route pre-race, and the event also being held at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning before the garden gets busy with pedestrians. So those conflicts arguably have been managed well over the years, and also developing that partnership with the organisers is really critical. And continuing to have conversations with them that should the event get too large, that maybe the Botanic Garden is not the place for that event to happen. Just a little note here on weddings, because they are generally on the smaller side of events, but ensuring hirers stick to the rules is a constant cause of conflict, and it seems to be getting worse. Rules are provided at multiple stages of the hiring process to ensure they're followed, but still on wedding days, the rules can be forgotten or blatantly disregarded. So Auckland Botanic Gardens moving to a model of having an event company manage discretionary activities like weddings. So all events, wedding events on site would be booked through the event management company and not through Auckland Botanic Garden directly. Means staff here won't need to permit, they won't need to open gates, deal with infrastructure and all those necessary evils. The key relationship turns for Auckland Botanic Gardens to the relationship with the event company and not with each of the over 60 wedding parties that come through every year. Now, thankfully, these couple of photos aren't at any botanic garden. These are at our Auckland Domain area. And this is really to illustrate that often event managers build remediation into the event as an accepted cost, right? That must be budgeted for. And these images at Auckland Domain show clearly what happens when remediation into an event as an accepted cost that must be, sorry, excuse me, need a glass of water. These photos show clearly what can happen when remediation is an accepted part and parcel of having an event on site. We shouldn't allow it. This is not what we want to see. So for Botanic Gardens, remediation is not a goal. It's not damage at the expense of the Botanic Garden collections. So having honest conversations up front around the repercussions of not following permit conditions and damaging the gardens may end up in the event never coming here again. So it's really important to have those, and I'm very jealous, and I'm sure Mitch online will be very jealous. Damien was talking about the bond at Sydney. That's another good way to ensure these things don't happen. However, when people have got big pockets, the bond is whether they pay $10,000, neither here nor there. We actually want to stop this sort of damage at the source and manage it that way. So a few key takeaways. I wanted to be really clear and concise and have 3 key takeaways, but I ran away with myself. But clarity of mission and vision. Look, this looks different for every garden, right? So knowing what this is for your individual botanic garden ensures you don't sell your soul or dilute key mission messages. Knowing your audience, well, that helps you to remain relevant. Really important, especially in community botanic gardens. Having clear processes and criteria protects you from that dreadful question that you often get asked by people: why are you not doing this event? Or why are you not doing this in your botanic garden? Being aware of your biases, because they limit out-of-the-box thinking. You never know what can come of a simple event that you've said yes to. Making clever connections to plant collections, and this help, and you've got to kind of help make the connections, as visitors may not see those connections themselves. So that's where the clever part of it comes in. I think everyone focused on this: debrief, document, learn, alter. So change criteria when something happens that you want to avoid in the future. Be nimble with that. Remediation versus valuing spaces. Bang on about the value of your space and do not allow for remediation costs being an acceptable part of hosting an event. Relationship management. As I said before, big wins come from the most unexpected of places. So keep those that relationship management high. Balance events versus core activities. Everyone has mentioned this. having events in our spaces takes us all away from our core activity. It needs to be balanced carefully, and how much will look different for each garden. And then I've finished with the exploit natural bloom events, the FOMO. People don't like the fear of missing out. So exploit natural bloom events in your garden that allow you the opportunity to really focus in on the beauty of the plant collections and really telling your message to visitors that may be new or old to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara, for that. We've got a few minutes left, so I might just try and see if there's any questions out there. I sort of kept a little bit of an eye on the chat, but I've missed a few. But even if you just want to put your hand up and ask a question, more than sort of happy for you to do that also. I just want to say a really big thank you to our presenters as well, if they want to all pop on again. Thank you so much for your time in presenting for BCARM today and all the people that have joined in. So yeah, really appreciate yeah, the time to do the presentations and also as well. So thank you. If I suppose we've got a few more minutes, I really liked, I think Peter might have said in the chat too, that make clever connections to your plant collections. That was great. And also I think it was Peter maybe said about, you know, it's not just a plant, you know, there's so much that goes into the collections, I suppose, that people don't see. So yeah, I suppose that communication around our collections and getting that out there. I suppose I'll just ask a couple of questions if anyone wants to jump in. They're not sort of directed at anyone in particular, but do you find more visitation after having those large events? Do you think you get sort of more people coming in and wandering around after the big events, or people who normally wouldn't come in for a stroll come in?
I think, yeah, from our perspective, from what I've been aware of, there's definitely, you hear those comments like, you know, I haven't been here for years or hadn't thought about coming, but then I've been to this event and it's, you know, reminded me of what an incredible place this is. And, you know, so I think it definitely does, yeah, have a flow on effect, I would say, from our perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You do hear those comments at events where people say, "Gosh, I haven't had a reason to come to Minuriwa in South Auckland for years. They live across the other side of the city, and they come for an event, and it really prompts them to think, "Gosh, maybe I should come here more often." And that's what you want. That's the bonus of having an event, to remind people that you are here. And that you shouldn't be in that infinitely delayable category.
I think also we see it with people who organise the events. So not just the people that come and experience the events, but those that host them sometimes are surprised, even though they've selected the gardens as the place to come and visit. They themselves have the same experience and realise they haven't been for a long time, and they suddenly wake up and realise once they're on site how special it is.
I concur with all that. I don't think need to say more than we get people, you know, looking forward to the next event as well. So they're sort of engaging with our web page and social media. So it does encourage people to come to the garden.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I just had another quick question while I've got a couple of minutes left. With sort of engaging, I suppose, with the staff, I suppose at the big events and that you would have them booked in sort of yearly or even more in advance than that, but with a calendar event. But how do you go about sort of approaching the staff and sitting down with them, and then I suppose afterwards as well, debriefing and sort of resolving those issues that might have arisen from having the event?
Gosh, that's a big question. At the end of the day, it's involving them through the whole process, I think. And some events, as you say, the big ones are thought about yearly, 2 yearly in advance. But those little ones, it's engaging with the staff, keeping them involved in the process. I know Mitch Newton here, she always reaches out to the field team and says, okay, what are the issues with this event proposal that's come through to us? So involving them very early on and making sure that communication keeps up through the whole thing. We haven't got it exactly right. You know, there's always little curly things that hit our way that we've maybe forgotten to communicate, but where possible, keeping people involved always helps.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. With my 20% of my role with events and being that conduit with the Hort team, I think that's really helped with the lightscape planning last year, the bump in. So I've worked very closely with a member of our infrastructure team and our events team, and then the production team. And then I can feed back queries to our Hort team, what's happening on the ground, liaise with the Arbor team. And I think having that connectivity and that involvement with the team prior to, during and after providing feedback only helps everybody in the process, and then helps us plan again for the next year, which is just bumping in now, and just doing a few things differently, and continuing to review. So I think it's really beneficial.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
We just had one.
Keep on talking and encouraging people to have their views heard and responding to them.
Yeah, for sure. We've just hit 11:30, but we just had one question come through from Joel. There's a clear distinction between contractors, externals who truly understand what a Botanic Gardens is and why sensitivity is required, and those who do not. And it's sometimes only obvious after a contract is signed. Any tips for filtering prior to selection?
I'm happy to go first on this one. I guess for me, it's always really useful for bringing those kind of people into the garden and showing them what you're working with. So what I used to do, talking to people in a previous garden in Canberra, was at the Australian National Botanic Garden. There's a loop that you can do that takes about half hour, 45 minutes, and it takes everyone through every single collection, you know, the key sort of collections in the garden. And in doing that, spend the time talking about why you do the things that you're doing, what we need to consider, and how it can impact. And, you know, pointing out nice things in the garden as you go along. And sometimes I think just having that experience and immersing them in it and getting them into the site, understanding what we're working with, is one of the ways you can really help to bridge that divide and that understanding gap before you get into that contract negotiation side of things, so that they really have a good feel for what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Getting them into the garden, having that conversation, and really focusing in on what the garden is from your point of view, and explaining that value to them is ultra important. So 100%, Damien, agree.
I've just had another one from Peter. What are the tips to ensure that the living collections don't become mere wallpaper for events? Thanks, Peter.
I think that point that Barbara touched on, I think we've all touched on to some extent, is that clever communications. It's just, this is one aspect of many, I guess, but making sure we utilise those events to actually communicate why we're here, what we're doing, the importance of our collection. It isn't just a wallpaper for an event. It's way more than that. And the event wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this lovely wallpaper. So, you know, actually being, using our channels, whether it's interpretation, communication, staff on the ground, and making sure those messages get out there around those events, I think is really important.
I feel like maybe I shouldn't comment on this one, given we've got the green wall and the calyx. It kind of is just a wallpaper. But I think, you know, sometimes it's being as direct as you can and just saying to people how it is. Like, this is actually a botanic garden. It's not just a park. These are the kind of things we do, the conservation, you know, the horticulture that takes a long time to get us to this point. You know, talking about the expertise behind the people that do the work. You know, they're not just gardeners, they're horticultural experts. you know, they have learnt their trade over many, many years, and they're very good at it for a very good reason. You know, they're working with a diversity of plants that you don't see. And, you know, John Seaman at the Gardens is always talking about how we have 11,800 species in our collection in Botanic Gardens of Sydney, and Taronga Zoo has only hundreds of animals. You know, so the complexity that we're working with is far greater. So I think being honest and upfront and just being proud of it is probably one of the ways that I'd go about it. While I stand in front of the green wall.
So we might finish it up there. I don't want to run too much over time, but yeah, no, that was fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for answering those few questions. And yeah, I suppose yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks again to our presenters and everyone who joined us today. So yeah, we'll leave it there.
Thanks, Sheree.
Thank you.
Sheree, thanks all.
See ya.